Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jaya Kula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are.
My family has a big Catholic attachment. So using pain to remove your sins is quite a thing. Maybe my question is, how can I talk to my family about this in a way that we can establish a relationship of conversations where we don't hit a wall? Because I love them.
If we're talking about like formal self-infliction of pain, in some Christian traditions, it's usually based on an idea of the self as being sinful, that there's something wrong with you and you deserve that pain, and then the pain is somehow salutary. It somehow helps you to feel that pain, to suffer in the eyes of God, recognizing that you're a sinner in the eyes of God. I'm no expert on all of the different Christian permutations. There's so many different forms of Christianity in the world, and not all of them see pain in that way. But in general, in the Abrahamic traditions, not just Christianity, God metes out punishment. And you can either mete it out yourself or just have it inflicted on you, or both. But it's somehow based on the punishment is somehow going to cleanse you. Our view of the self is completely different. And the pain that we experience is a natural occurrence because we have limited self-concept and limited emotional range and limited perceptual range. And we're very attached to certain ideas of ourselves and others and the world. When those ideas, those concepts, and those behavior patterns start to be challenged, it's painful. It isn't punishment. It's part of the natural process of liberation. The only thing that occurs to me, you can't explain this to your family. They aren't enculturated in this kind of tradition. They haven't gravitated toward it. They're where they want to be and where they have every right to be if that's how they choose to worship. The only thing that occurs to me is that you could circumvent all of the view, all of the teachings, by just saying, to me, you're good. You don't deserve punishment. You're good. Everyone is good. You could just say something like that. I don't know what kind of conversation that would provoke, but I don't know that a conversation about view in a philosophical sense is worth it. I think just speaking to people's hearts is the most important thing. The fact is they are good. And if you can speak to that and move them, then that's the best thing you could possibly do.
I've noticed that I look for meaning in everything. I'm not sure what that's defending against. What is that defending against?
Well, I think in your emotional landscape, you feel lowly, and the antidote that you've come up with is to feel special in some way. You bounce back and forth between feeling a lack of value or not liking yourself, and then creating reasons why you're special and not dislikable. But these are extremes. Finding the meaning in things, there's many things that could mean, right? It could be something very human realmy, but in the God realm, those meanings are going to be transcendental. Those meanings are going to be something spiritually special. Those meanings are going to designate you or your life or what's happening to you as spiritually special. So the thing is, those are extremes. The extreme of feeling you have all these meaningful things happening versus you're really not very worthy. So going back and forth. The idea is to find a middle. Because if you're bouncing back and forth between these extremes, you're going to be depressed. That causes depression. to bounce back and forth between one unreal version of yourself to another one that's like crap and one that's exalted. That's a recipe for being depressed, not really having anywhere to stand. When I was in my teens, I was depressed a lot, and a lot of that was because of gluten, but not all of it was. I had two parents who were kind of those extremes. In my mother's eyes, I could do no wrong, and I was this extraordinary creature. And in my father's eyes, I was always doing everything wrong. I was kind of bouncing back and forth between those two views of myself. And I went to therapy because I was chronically depressed. I told the therapist I don't want to take drugs. So she said, okay, just give me 6 months. We'll work on it. The most valuable thing she taught me was the depression is being caused because you're bouncing back and forth between these two extreme views of yourself. And you need to find what you actually think of yourself and who you actually are according to you. And it helped a lot. So I pass it on to you. I hope it'll help you.
It's been a little bit hard relating to my mom and just the condition that she's in. She really, really suffers a lot. And from my view, there's a lot of things that could be done to lessen the suffering that she's just not interested in, like diet or self-care or alternative medicine, anything like that. It's just a little bit hard over time to watch her suffering, and certainly there's some disappointment and some judgment. I don't feel really good about that because part of me recognizes that it's her life and respects that, but it's hard to be with.
I think whenever we're in a situation like that, it's usually with parents, sometimes with siblings, but someone with whom we're not likely to break off relations with, no matter how difficult they are. We have to, I think, find our reason for being there, regardless of what they're doing. I don't know if you've articulated that to yourself yet, but just some simple thing. I'm here because I want to do something, and it can't involve I want them to do something. It's got to be something you're doing for your own satisfaction. And I think that might help if you could articulate that. Having your own self-contained reason for being there really calms things down.
Sometimes I have articulated to myself a reason of that sort that is along the lines of I just feel like, I guess, a sense of duty, or like I just feel like she's mine to care for.
For a lot of people, a sense of duty is coming from the outside. Our culture tells us you're the dutiful daughter and that's the role you have to fulfill. If that's how you're processing the idea of duty, then that could become very burdensome or not really solve the issue that you're talking about. But if you have a feeling like I am a person who gets satisfaction out of being loyal and dutiful, that's a different kind of an orientation. It's like I have an orientation of being a servant. Now, if I were to process that, for instance, through a feminist lens, it doesn't really work. If I thought, oh, this misogynistic culture has taught me to serve and not be out in front, then I could get extremely resentful about the whole thing about being a servant. But the identity or the feeling of servanthood that I have has nothing to do with that. It's how my devotional aspect shows up. It belongs to me, and it's not about anyone or anything else. And so I can keep serving even when people are being jerks. It doesn't really matter how anyone else is behaving. So duty is another thing. That could be part of someone's expression of devotion, to be dutiful, to be loyal, or just the idea that I want to return the favor to the person that brought me into the world. But it has to be something that you want, not just something you feel you should be or should do.
I can very much relate. Like even last night, I was talking to my mom and having a very similar experience. I feel there is value in other ways of taking care of our health, and I want that for her. I think there's some threads of like she's rejecting, but I feel like I've looked at that and I sort of can identify that and it doesn't bother me all that much. But I think my question is like how to take care. I do feel like I want to take care of her and I don't know how because the means that I have, she doesn't necessarily want. And yeah, that leaves a big question of just how to be there for her.
Have you ever asked her how she wants you to be there for her? You know, very often when we're thinking about how can I help someone, we're just stuck in our heads, like trying to come up with something. And the thing is, we just have to ask and just keep asking in different ways. If you only get a little bit of direction, just follow that little bit of direction. If we really want to be there for somebody, we have to be there on their terms, unless their terms are something that really conflicts with our sense of what we would ever do. Mm-hmm. Or their terms are just endlessly participate in my realm vision. That's just a waste of energy. But as long as they suggest something helpful and within the realm of sanity, that we should just go along with it.
I have a question about creative work. I feel like I kind of flicker in between being inward facing and outward facing with the energy. Sometimes it's very self-involved, but sometimes it is something I love to do and love sharing with people. And so I can like see that it's like this kind of impacted area. And then sometimes I want to avoid it altogether. I'm wondering if there's anything I can do about it or...
I'm not knocking being inward at all. There's a pulse in our lives between being inward and being more outward, and that's completely natural and healthy. One thing I was trying to work on when I was starting this practice was to not do creative work with tunnel vision. In other words, sometimes we do creative work and we sort of forget we have a body and we forget we're in a room and we forget there's anything happening other than this thing that we are sort of tunnel visioning. And that's particularly true with work on a computer, since a lot of the creative work I've done is writing. You know, I've very often been in front of some kind of machine, and in recent decades, a computer. It did take a bit of reorienting to do computer work and not forget the whole rest of the world. Mm-hmm. But that is possible. Obviously, if I'm doing creative work, I'm being inward to some extent, and that's fine. But you still want to have a body, and you still want to hear noises that are happening and still feel like you're in a circumstance. So work on that. Don't worry about being inward. Being inward is completely natural and fine. But being like disembodied tunnel vision, brain on a stick is not really desirable.
Interestingly, you showed up in my dream last night and also were wagging a finger at me, telling me to... When I was using the computer, I was not paying attention to other things. You're consistent.
Yeah. Your wisdom and my wisdom agree.
There's like another part about just making stuff for my personal brand.
Like doing creative work that's basically focused on self-promotion.
Yeah, wanting to make something beautiful in part because I think it's beautiful, but also in part because I want to have made something beautiful.
Right, and you want to be seen as having done that. You want to be the one who has done that. That's really an impediment when we're talking about creative work. If it's a constant or nearly a constant, it'll prevent you from experimenting in certain ways and just totally fucking up and making something ugly now and then, writing something really bad. We have to do that also to produce creative work. We have to be willing to make false starts and do things really badly too, and not just be thinking about what our audience is going to think of us. What that transmutes to, in my own experience as a creative person who's a practitioner, is that eventually I found that everything I do, I'm thinking of the impact it's going to have on other people. How is it going to help them to feel something or recognize something? And less as time goes by am I thinking about what anybody thinks of me. Of course, we're living in a culture where It's absolutely normal, natural, and expected for you to work on your brand. I didn't grow up that way. I imagine it's harder to get out of at this point in our history in this place. But it does happen. It's just part of that process of waking into more of a devotional feeling about everything, and just everything becomes what you want for other people.
I've always really struggled with social media and then generally just end quitting. But sometimes I want to have something like that because I think that there's helpful ways to participate too. In the kind of situation where like literally 99% of people are having a personal brand, do you have any like recommendation?
I can just tell you what I did. One thing about personal brand is that you censor yourself. There's things that belong with your brand and things that don't. You really highly curate what's going out there. And I decided at some point, I don't really remember when, but I just decided I'm not curating anything. If I want to say it or express it, I'm just going to. In terms of like how people are going to look at me, to hide things about myself or massage people's view of me is not happening. On one day, I made that decision to just whatever I feel like expressing, that's what's going on there. And then I just kept doing that. So dropping curation is one thing. I mean, you can make money, you can make political allies, you can support other people and causes, you can try to communicate certain things to people. A lot of what I'm doing is trying to communicate things to people, like particularly people who aren't necessarily in 100% agreement with me. I'm trying to inform people who don't read the same news sources that I do, keep certain things in front of them that they might not otherwise see. And I have no idea if it's working or what effect I'm having. But that's sort of another part of it. I'm just doing what I want to do. I want more people to know what's going on. Whether or not what I'm doing is effective, I don't know. But because I want to, I just do it. It's kind of a Bhagavad Gita thing. Let go of the result. So I would just say, do what you want. Put what you want on there and don't curate. It's a good expressive tool. I've just made so many connections on social media that are really enriching. I never had the attitude, despite my age, that relationships formed online are not real relationships. I always thought that was a ridiculous stance. So even from like really early days, I went on to, and we didn't have social media then, but I went online. There was definitely social things happening online with the attitude that these are real relationships and these are opportunities to talk to people I wouldn't ordinarily get to talk to. That was super fun. I mean, just having fun is another motivation. Doesn't have to be all like serious business.
Yeah, there's cool people on my...
Absolutely. You know, the fact that I get to talk to people who are actually living in Palestine, I just find that kind of miraculous. And that's not the first time that's happened. Just getting to talk to people in lots of different circumstances, places that I wouldn't normally have access to, find out about their lives. I think it's important, too, for the future of our lives here that we have those connections. That people literally really get to know each other, not just these sound bites of things we think about other people. So I think it's part of why there is a global intifada starting to come about right now. People actually really do know things and have real feelings about people that are in Palestine. Not necessarily people they know personally, but people whose lives they're following almost every day. Feel attached to them. And I think that's a huge part of the engine of this whole thing. So there's so many things that can happen. Satsang with Shambhavi is produced by Jaya Kula, a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. If you enjoyed listening, please help us keep this podcast and many other teachings open to all by making a monthly or one-time donation. Visit jayakula.org to make a donation and explore more of our offerings.